Looking back at the fact that this stream actually spanned 3 hours, I'm still very impressed that I managed to not even build that much in the live stream that I did for this time-lapse. So, yeah, there isn't too much interesting work, just kind of finishing up the Spanish building over here and seeing whatever I can even do with the log flume. There was also there's actually a lot lost also because of a crash, but that's something to talk about in the future, well, actually, later on in this video. But I suppose that everybody just has that sometimes. At least I feel like that. At least I'm gonna cry if I'm not the only person. But sometimes you just do things in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 and you really don't get as much done as sometimes at other times. And I feel like this was that sort of episode. Then again, sometimes you also just need to take some time to not do the grand things, but just finish up these small but also important things. I suppose that this is also that sort of an episode. So yeah, that's coming your way today, and it's all sponsored by, what's this guy called? I already lost the name of who I even got the music from, but it's some Italian composer, so, very fitting, I suppose? No idea, I have to get some new music though. In any case, here there was actually many problems. There was many problems. Let me go on my way to butcher English in the moment. There were many problems with trying to get the right windows over here, or at least I thought for a second, and then somehow the CTR Sind Dutch Colonial set just came up in my mind, and that was literally the most perfect thing I've ever had. So I just spent a couple minutes there just completely just looking at one window being like, man, that sure is a beautiful window, and I really wasn't expecting to find any really good windows that would fit the theme. So I was very happy to find out that this one would actually work, and then Poppet in the stream actually told me to get the doors from Ralphie's Russian Woods, because I was also really stressing about the doors, and I couldn't find any door that really fits it, but for some reason the Russian door is actually really good for this sort of thing. So, it did work out a lot better than expected beforehand, a Spanish building, but with Russian doors and with Dutch windows, and it even turned out to be really good. So, there you go. That's pretty much the restaurant all done, I suppose. Can also just add at some point later, just add some small planters and thingamajigs around it, but that's about it. And I think, yeah, that was just right there. Actually, no. It's not just right there. Alright, I'm checking back in. I think I have some explaining to do. I would like actually to explain some stuff, but I just took a short pause in my recording to actually fix the video file because it was completely broken. A lot more broken than I expected. Did I have like 3 crashes or something? Something probably went wrong with the video files while it crashed, but most likely I just done goofed in Sony Vegas or something. In any case, the videos were not in the right order and there were problems. What you let me actually talk over here. What you did just see was actually real time and was actually the way the video was supposed to be, but this part over here actually got into the video twice, which was the part after it just had crashed. But it actually was kind of funny that after the thing had crashed, I tried to rebuild what I had before and it didn't really work. I just built some slightly different things, but especially over here with these buildings, it actually did come out a lot better. Before the crash, I had these buildings both sticking out just as much from the rock, so there wasn't that half-tile difference, and even though it still did look somewhat alright since the left one was actually also lower than the right one, I think it is actually a lot better like this, and I suppose crashes are never really that terrible of a thing as I often like to proclaim they are after I just had a crash. I mean, obviously it's really annoying when you lose your stuff, especially if it's a lot. Like if it's hours of work, it's definitely a big problem, but if you just lose about an hour of work or less, it sometimes can help to even get you like the same thing done, but in a better way, since you can recognize the mistakes you've made in the past and kind of do everything all over again and actually get it done better. Also, usually if you do have to rebuild things after a crash, you're a lot quicker at it, since you don't really have to experiment with pieces or figure out what sort of things you need to do. So yeah, honestly, this did kind of make me realize my English is absolutely terrible today. I'm very sorry. This did make me realize that, you know, crashes aren't really as bad as they as you know, you sometimes think they are. Not to mention that I was streaming this, like, if I was actually live, I would have been slamming my head against my door at that point. But it was live, and it was all nice, and we were having a good time, and nobody really cared, and it was all good. But I should probably not talk about that. I should probably even talk a tiny bit about these houses, though I must say there isn't really too much to these things. They aren't really even, they don't really have any sort of idea to them. It's just that I wanted a tiny bit of buildings on this rock, since I was very much afraid that if I wouldn't add anything on it, it would just very quickly become a still rock. And you can add as much foliage as you want. A still rock is something that you want to avoid, which is something that you'll probably see in any theme park. If they do have a fake mountain, that there's most likely something to it. Like, it's either a volcano, which has a cool crater or something, or they have some nice little alpine houses near the bottom of the hill, or they have a roller coaster do all kinds of crazy stuff on it. But I generally tend to avoid having a completely empty rock, and foliage does not really count as rock filling, since if you fill it with foliage, you can fill it with as much foliage as you like, but at some point it just turns into a big forest, and that's also what you kind of want to avoid. Plus, it is a bit of a shame if you just like spend an hour on the rock first and then completely cover it with foliage. I would kind of recommend against doing that. But the basic idea over here was that I had a sort of Spanish styled theme. I have no idea exactly, but I'm sure that somebody knows about this. Like in Spain, I think you have them too, but also in Turkey, there are some monasteries that are built into the rocks, and they have these galleries of buildings which are like built into the cliff faces, and I always like seeing those things, so that was in a way the inspiration for the left buildings over there, though not too much. As you can see, they are very incredibly small. And then the building on the right, I couldn't really build it into a cliff face, and I was also afraid that it would turn out to be a tiny bit too boring if I put that thing into a cliff face as well. So this is now a little church, or chapel, whatever you will. Just a tiny little building just to spruce up the hill a tiny bit. At this point, I do feel like it's safe to just add the foliage and other things that I really want to add to it, but just having those couple of buildings just spices up the rock a tiny bit. I mean, otherwise it really would have been just a dead rock, and I wanted to avoid that at all costs. And what I did with these trees, I think at the moment when I was placing those trees, everybody was just like, oh my god, you look at that, Silver is completely going nuts. He's trying to sink trees into rocks, and it just, no. But the idea is, usually when you have really high mountains, especially in those like mountains in Spain, you have these small pine trees on top of them, which are not actually, they're not really like pine trees, they're very small pine bushes. And that was the sort of thing that I wanted to emulate with the short-leaf pine, that's it, from Old Spice's trees. And it doesn't do the job perfectly. I mean, anybody can recognize the short-leaf pine from a great distance. It is arguably one of the most overused trees in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. But then again, it seems more fitting than the smaller pines in Old Spice's Pines, for example, or the larch from Station Jim's Gardening, as those look very northern styled. And I really wanted to get a pine that would also look like it is a Mediterranean sort of pine, which is also something that many people don't often realize about Mediterranean foliage. It is not just cypress. It's not just spam the cypress everywhere and you're good. It's more like many pines. There's a lot of different pines in the Mediterranean area, and you still have many pine forests, just in a very different way than you would have in Northern Europe, for example. The only problem with it, though, I do understand, is the fact that there are barely... I don't even think there are no specific Mediterranean pine tree custom scenery sets. And that's really one of the problems, especially if you look in Rome, for example, they do have that signature pine, which I completely forgot the name of. But yeah, just that's the sort of thing that I was looking for this part of the park. So Old Spice's trees pine is just gonna have to do it at the moment. Though I was afraid of overusing that thing. I honestly can't spam that thing all over the place. Hell, even at the moment, I do think that I did use it maybe a tiny bit too much, but then again, there really was no alternative that I know of. There is, of course, the, what is that even called? There is a different pine. There's a different pine in N7's Big Trees, which is a lot like the short-leaf pine in Spice's Trees, but... Oh yeah, right, the lodgepole pine, there we go. But that one does look a lot more northern, and just doesn't have the branches, and doesn't just have that look, that exact look that I wanted to have that this pine tree does sort of have. Now, I did add those big burgers timbers along the back sides. This is basically just supporting work, and supporting work is boring, so I'm just gonna disregard that for the time being. I did want to have that tiny bit of supporting around the other side, since, yeah, I was worrying, should I or should I not add some decent scenery on the back side of the hill. I mean, I shouldn't for a realistic purpose that it just makes no sense. Like, why would you even theme that? But then on the other hand, I didn't want to leave it completely unthemed. I do want to make this as nice as possible. And there's also the railway underneath it, and you don't want to see big grey concrete boxes if you're on the railway. That being said, by the way, it would be pretty cool to have that train go through some backstage areas, but not over here. This is not a good area to be backstage. So this is sort of, I suppose, the middle route of doing it. Just have a simple cliff face on the side of the railway and just support the log flume with Big Burger's timber above that, and I feel pretty safe about doing that. That being said, the supports over here, which I'm just working on for the main drop, are something which I'm still not too sure about, since they just don't really feel too realistic. Then again, when's the last time you've really seen a log flume like this with wooden supports? Seriously though, when's the last time you've actually seen a log flume that looks like this? It still looks like an aqua coaster, and that is definitely a problem that I need to address. I've been thinking of just getting the I completely lost the name. There is also one other water ride in Europa Park, which there is a CT for in the Europa Park pack, of course, but I just completely forgot the name. But there is that one other water ride which should have the same curves and same drops, so I should be able to get that in and just use some track intersection to add that to this part and make the drop look a tiny bit more log flume-ish. But if I really want to get it to work, I'm gonna have to actually head into the custom scenery, I mean the importer into SketchUp and all that good jazz, and actually make a log flume track for underneath this, which is something that I'm definitely not looking forward to, and it's something that I'm still procrastinating to this day. And as I am commentating this, I'm already working on the Dutch area a tiny bit, despite the Spanish area not being completely finished. But that'll all happen in episode 93, so I shouldn't talk about that yet. Actually, maybe in 94. Hell, where am I even at? I'm too far ahead. I need to catch up again. But yeah, I figured that the log flume was alright supported. Like, if I wanted to get the track done, if I wanted to make it look more like a log flume, I could probably just use the Big Burger's timber as supports, I figure. So this is just a tiny bit of working on that island. It's not really important to work on these areas. I kind of just wanted to do it for myself. I don't know if I'm alone in this, but I always just feel like adding foliage to your park just makes it look that much more complete. And the more complete that a park looks, I don't know, for some reason it just makes it more fun for me to work on it as well. Just having this flat ride, for example, these little ships over here, but without any foliage whatsoever, is just really immersion breaking. And I just want to get the foliage in here around this area, just to kind of make the park look a tiny bit more like it's actually coming together. I suppose the reason for that is just a tiny bit of a motivational thing for me. Just knowing that, alright, so this episode is this part of the park is going to work out with foliage. We're almost there, and this should just fit in the whole of the park. I suppose that's sort of the grand idea behind it, though I don't really understand all of my thoughts sometimes. Is that really a problem? I don't think so. In any case, this was just a tiny bit like, this is the sort of typical thing that I think I was really talking about in the intro, just the tiny things that nobody really notices. Like, nobody is going to notice, what a beautiful planter right there, right next to that flat ride. That is what I really like about this park. But these are just the small things that you sometimes just need to get a tiny bit of time for to just do in peace and quiet, and just work on that. Nothing spectacular. But I always find it quite nice to just be placing flowers. This is the sort of stuff that you don't really need to think about too much. Just placing simple foliage and making simple planters. I mean, when you're trying to plan areas, when you're trying to plan buildings, facades, or rides on a bigger scale, you really do need to keep thinking about what you're going to be able to do with it in the future and have a larger plan in the back of your head. But whenever you're just spamming any sort of flower into a flower box, that sort of thing just doesn't even happen. I don't know, it's just kind of like doing the brainless sort of stuff in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 from time to time. Speaking of brainless, at this point, I think I decided... Oh no, I didn't even decide that yet. Nope, I didn't talk about anything. At some point in time, I was going to start working on the buildings to actually connect the current Spanish facades with the main square area, which is something that I still need to do, but I have just not felt inspired for that at all, and I have no idea how I'm even going to pull that off. So every time I just try that, every time I even try adding a building, it just miserably fails. So that's something to really worry about in the future. But then again, that's something to worry about in the future. I might just procrastinate it. Also, I figured over here I could even get the beach fence grass in there, because I was looking for a more sort of reed looking thing, but that really just doesn't exist. There is of course the reed in the harbor sets, but it doesn't really work out as well if you want to really get more reed and grass near the banks of your rivers. So yeah, that's what beach fence is actually getting spammed for here. I've been a complete knobhead today, but it's time to stream, so I'll see you later. And thanks for watching, of course, as always. I'm feeling like Vsauce whenever I say that. Seriously, is nobody feeling like that? And as always, thanks for watching. And then a little splatter of paint on the screen, but I can't have to. I need to fucking end this